Howdy, folks. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about why the age-old adage of you're just going to outgrow that thing, man, you'll outgrow it, is just kind of bad advice. I'm going to talk to you guys about, what does it even mean to outgrow a motorcycle? Why it's kind of a bit of a pejorative, in my opinion, to just tell people they're going to outgrow their motorcycle. Because here's the thing, everybody is born with different abilities, different innate skills, right? And riding a motorcycle, as much as we want to say online, it's not a particularly difficult skill, right? Like, some of the fancier tricks and some of the crazier stuff you can do on a motorcycle can certainly be highly difficult. Not like this, what I'm doing here, I'm just doing it as an example. But literally billions of people around the world can ride motorcycles. I mean, they're just like a form of transportation, and we kind of gatekeep that skill, and then we kind of assume here, especially in the United States, we say, oh, you're just going to outgrow it because, it's not that hard to ride, so why don't you get the big bike and just go ahead and skip the steps that it requires to learn and ride. And there's just so many layers to this. So let's start off with the first one that, you'll outgrow it, so just go ahead and skip it. There's a lot of ego built into that statement, right? You're saying basically, oh, I am capable enough to handle a bigger bike, and I don't want to waste the time that it's going to take to learn on a little bike and then have to sell the other bike and get the big bike. I'm just going to go ahead and get the big bike. And while there are plenty of examples of people who start on larger machines and let's say they don't crash, let's say they don't have situations, but really all they've done is they've survived their first year. They haven't maybe thrived or grown or evolved. And for every person who posts online or says in forums, hey man, I started on a big bike, I'm totally fine, you're just going to outgrow that little thing, there's countless examples of people who probably silently don't say anything, right? They don't go online and say, man, I started on a big bike and I lost my leg. It's survivorship bias. It's that classic thing. So think again, for everybody you see online that says, I started on a big bike, you're going to be fine, that's just a lot of confirmation bias. You're just jumping online and seeing what people are saying and trying to, see if the thing you want to do is okay to do, right? And if you're already finding yourself in that position where you're thinking to yourself, oh, I got to find, other people who basically corroborate my belief system so that I feel comfortable doing what I want to do, well, you're probably not in good shape. The next point is that one of, it's a bit of a pejorative, right? It's not a nice thing to tell people, oh, that bike, you're just going to outgrow it. There's a lot of people, myself included, who don't really aspire to ride the fastest, most crazy, most powerful motorcycle, because the longer you ride, the more you realize that that's really not the end goal of motorcycling. We kind of get wrapped up in this power progression ladder in our sport, our hobby, our lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, that every single person is trying to go from, a 45 horsepower beginner bike to a 120 horsepower middleweight bike to a 200 horsepower leader bike. That is the way God ascertained for you to enjoy motorcycling. But really, all that is the manufacturer's marketing spiels working on you. You're letting corporations think for you. You're not developing your own skill sets and thinking critically about this. Let me give you a perfect example. Literally just 20, 30 years ago, right, 130 horsepower was the King Kong levels of horsepower. That was the top of the ladder, baby. That was the big power bike. The only reason 200 horsepower is now seen as, even workable on street is because of all the electronics and because of all the marketing materials that have convinced people that that's a, good level of power to have on the street. And look, many people, myself included, love big power motorcycles. I've owned so many really powerful, fast motorcycles. But telling yourself that you're just going to outgrow something because it makes less power, it implies that you have reached the limits of that machine, that you have outgrown it. And let me tell you, unless you're ripping balance point wheelies on your Ninja 400, unless you're dragging elbow on your Ninja 400, unless you're cutting up lap times around your local track that are as fast as 600s and novice group on your 400, you have not outgrown your motorcycle. All that's happened is you've become bored with it. And there's nothing wrong becoming bored with a motorcycle. One of the fantastic things about motorcycling is that these machines aren't necessarily that expensive, pound for pound, right? You can own quite a few of them. You can swap and change them relatively easily. You can buy them such that the depreciation doesn't hit your wallet too bad. And you can enjoy many different bikes. I know guys that literally change out their motorcycles like they change out their underwear. I'm thinking of one of my buddies who I think literally every 3 months he has a different motorcycle. And, you know, that's just the way he rolls. I'm more of the guy, I like to keep mine for like 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 years. I don't really like swapping bikes, but I'm very privileged that I get to ride a bunch of different motorcycles for the channel, and I've owned a bunch of different ones for the giveaway, so I feel like I kind of whet my appetite that way. But yeah, outgrowing it, man, you're not going to outgrow a small bike. You're like, all that's going to happen is you just got bored and you just want something different. You want a little more power, you want a different engine, you want a different vibe, and there's nothing wrong with that, but outgrowing it is a very dangerous place to be. And I'll give you a personal example on this. When I started riding, I was on a Yamaha R3. I did the smart thing for a 22-year-old guy at the time, which is what I was. I said, you know what, let me start off small, let me get an appropriate beginner motorcycle and learn the craft, right? That lasted all of 7 months and 10,000 miles until I upgraded to my Daytona 675R that I had. And I truthfully wasn't ready for that upgrade yet. I had convinced myself that I could do it. I was like, okay, like I can afford it. I'm kind of bored of my R3. I had told myself I've outgrown it. I did not outgrow it. I didn't even do a track day on the R3. I didn't even know how to like properly carve through corners on the R3. All I wanted was a more powerful motorcycle. So I told myself, oh dude, you've outgrown it. You know, 6 months, 10,000 miles. It's just not that much time or mileage in the grand scheme of things. And you got to think about the quality of those miles too, right? You can go out and be a highway warrior and rack up, 5,000 miles going in a straight line and say, oh man, I did 5,000 miles on that beginner bike. Like, I'm ready for the next thing. And it's like, no, man, you got to put yourself in lots of different situations with your starter motorcycle so you can grow, so you can adapt, so you can change. And, ultimately, you're the only person that's going to be able to make the call as to whether or not you're ready to upgrade, whether or not you've truly outgrown your motorcycle. But you're never really going to outgrow it. Like I said, you're always going to come back to a place where, you think to yourself, oh, I could have done more with that bike, because you can't always do more with the bike, because it always comes down to the rider, not the equipment.
I know some of you have been clamoring to know, Yam, who won the Honda Hornet 750? Well, this is a cool story. Braden in Houston actually won it, and I was able to do a hand delivery to him. Check it out.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I'm really excited for you on this bike. Delivered here in the Houston area. You said you're heading off to the Marines, though, right? So you may not keep the bike?
Yeah, maybe not. Probably
Okay.
not.
Okay, probably.
June or July, I'm going to leave, I believe.
Yeah, well, at least it'll be here in a good home. And, well, if you see it come up for sale, maybe you pick it up from Braden over here. But hopefully you get a chance to ride a little bit, have some fun, and big congrats to Braden over here.
So big congrats to Braden on winning the Honda Hornet 750. This Moto Guzzi is up for grabs over on yamany.co. Go and click the link down below and make sure you're entered as a member for your best chance to win.
And let's say you are the type of person that you buy your starter motorcycle and then, let's say 6 months down the road, you want something different. Is it so bad to have taken the path of, less risk, right? Because the flip side to that, like I said, all the people who did not make it to tell you the story about how they ended up losing a leg or whatever, if you don't go down the path of you'll outgrow it or whatever, you're like, oh, I'm going to start on the 600, I'm going to start on the 750, whatever it is, right? That's riskier, right? You're trading that ability for you to say, oh, I won't have to sell it down the road. You're trading that and offsetting that with just more risk, and it's not really worth it, in my opinion. If you get something like a Ninja 500 or a Ninja 650 or an SV 650, something just appropriate and normal for a beginner bike, you're able to basically have the path of most likely success. You're going to be able to take a look at that motorcycle, ride it, and find yourself in a good position with it, right? You're more than likely going to succeed on your motorcycling journey. I think those of you who have chosen to start on big bikes, you took a risk, and you know, sometimes I guess it pays off and you survived and you're on the 1,000 as your first motorcycle or whatever, which is just a crazy idea. But some people do that, and some people end up going that path, and I just think it's really not worth the risk necessarily. Because I think it's really easy for those of us who have been riding for a long time to jump on a motorcycle that makes, you know, 100 horsepower and think to ourselves, oh, this is a nice amount of power. Like, this is a good, fun little motorcycle. Like, I catch myself saying stuff like that all the time, especially when we review, like, the middleweight naked stuff. Like, I remember when we had the Panigale V2 last year, and I was like, oh, this is like a super, I was like, this is a fun, you know, streetable, usable motorcycle. This is great. The thing makes 120 horsepower. To a beginner rider, that's a lot of power, and it can definitely scare them. And I think when we have the experience, we have a tough time putting ourselves in the mindset and in the shoes of somebody who is actually just starting out, you know? Somebody who is not used to how fast any motorcycle is. I mean, even this Moto Guzzi, right? With bad inputs, it can... I mean, look at that, right? If you have bad inputs, motorcycles are very unforgiving. They do not like whenever you do stuff like that. And it just puts yourself in a bad position when you don't start on a bike that's appropriate. But yeah, it really is one of the most pervasive things, especially in American riding culture, because obviously in Europe, you know, they're limited by the A1, A2 system. So a lot of people who are under the age of 24 don't have the proper licensing. They end up, you know, like they basically can't get the bikes they want to get, right? So they're just limited naturally. They just can't even conceive of being like, oh, I'm going to be 22 and I'm going to go buy a S1000 RR. It's like, well, you literally can't buy an S1000 RR. Like, you have to wait. And I don't think that's a bad thing, honestly. The more I talk to motorcyclists who've been around the block here in America, the more that I see consensus for the A1, A2 licensing system. Because honestly, again, that's my personal story. I think I upgraded way too early to my Daytona 675. I kind of wish that I had an A2 kind of, you know, restriction on my license until I was at least 24, or until I at least had at least 2 years of experience with that R3. There was really no reason for me to go and get a much more powerful motorcycle other than the fact that I could, you know, like somebody allowed me to sign on the dotted line and go get that motorcycle. Because yeah, the envelope of skill that I see online of the folks who say they quote unquote outgrew a motorcycle, oh man, it's just, it's pretty dismal, I'm not gonna lie. I think particularly guys who are on the 600s and then they say they outgrew that, and that's why they grabbed a 1000. Oh my goodness. Riding a 600 to its actual limits is really hard. It takes a lot of skill, and it's just not something that an average street rider is going to become even close to. But again, there's reasonable reasons to upgrade. If you don't like the 600's power band characteristics, you want more electronics, you want something different, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting the 1000 after riding a 600 and you decide that that's what you want to do. And of course, with great power comes great responsibility. That so much should not even be a question, right? But, you know, don't tell yourself you got it because you outgrew the 600. Let's be so for real, right? And the big power thing is really interesting. Like, we've got a bike right now. It's the next giveaway bike we're going to do after this Moto Guzzi. It's a brand spanking new Aprilia 210 V4 factory. And I've been riding it around. I think I've put like 500 miles on it already. And it's been a while since I've had a really fast street bike, right? And it's just like, when you have the skills, which I do have, like I've done track days and racing, and I've been riding for over a decade, like responsibly wielding that kind of power is tremendous. It is super fun. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not fun to ride a super fast motorcycle. But the thing is, a lot of people massively overestimate their capabilities to ride a machine like that and should basically have no business being on something like that. So, what do you guys think about outgrowing your motorcycle? Leave me a comment down below if you outgrew your motorcycle, if you have not outgrown your motorcycle, if you never grew up or out of your motorcycle. I would also love to hear from you as well. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. I really do appreciate it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.